pursuit of happiness. Life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Anybody know where that phrase comes from? It's close, not the Constitution, but the Declaration of Independence. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. If the government starts guaranteeing you happiness, they're going the wrong direction. They can't do that. They can guarantee you freedom to do it. All right? Let me ask you this. Fill in the blank. This makes me happy. Anybody got anything? What makes me happy? I thought you might say your husband or wife and get some brownie points real quick, but nobody said that. Sunshine makes me happy. Is that a song? Sunshine? Jesus makes me happy. Anybody else? What? Church makes me happy. We're giving all the good answers. Grandchildren, yeah. Grandchildren make me happy. Air conditioning makes me happy. How about you? Yeah. Well, happiness is a... What?
My pastor and preacher makes me happy.
Oh, boy, you definitely give brownie points there. All right. All right, look at this. Here's a survey a few years ago. Would you rather achieve great things or be happy? 8% said they'd rather achieve great things, 5% not sure, and 87% said, I'd rather be happy. Happiness is a major goal in our society today. Look at this. Amazon printed 1,000 books in one 3-month period, all on the subject of happiness. People are wanting to know how to be happy. I've got one downer on this, though. Statistically, 6 out of 7 dwarfs aren't happy. Okay, thanks for the courtesy laugh. I appreciate that. All right. Happiness is a big deal in our society. And matter of fact, it's a major theme that everybody thinks I'm going to do what I want to do to make me happy. And I don't care what other people believe, what we've done in the past, what God says or whatever. I'm going to be happy. This is a big deal in our society today. But all of us do. It's a human thing to want to be happy. Let me mention one other thing before I get more into it. This is a book, Homo Deus, written by this hot guy there you all know, Harari, who wrote a book on the history of humankind. And now he wrote this book, A Brief History of Tomorrow. He is one of these who believes we're going to, by 2050, we'll hit singularity, where the humans will download themselves into a robot with AI, and will achieve singularity and have a new total species. And then anybody who doesn't do that is going to be not in good shape. So look at this from the preface of his book. He says, humanity's next targets are likely to be immortality, without God, just immortality, will live forever, happiness, and divinity. Divinity. We will now aim to overcome old age and even death itself. Having saved people from abject misery, we will now aim to make them positively happy. We will now aim to upgrade humans into gods and turn Homo sapiens into Homo Deus. Homo sapiens is wise man. The Latin term for us, our species, Homo Deus is God man. What is he saying? We're going to be like God. Who else said that? Genesis. What does it say? Genesis says, you won't die, the serpent replied to the woman. God knows that your eyes will be open and you will be like God. Same old, same old. And now we're going to combine with, and let me make a prediction. Ain't going to happen.
Great.
Ain't going to happen. We're not going to combine with computers, become a super new species, and become God. There's one God, only ever will be with God. There may be, and here's, let's put a parenthesis around there may be one who claims to combine with computer and AI, and his number is the number of a man, and will be infused by the devil and convince people he is the new super God. And that time could be soon. Who knows? But we are not going to become gods like that. But my point is, anything to get happiness without God. This is what a lot of people are seeking. So the question is, since I'm sort of saying that in a negative way, does God want me to be happy? Is that an okay thing? Is it all right? for Christians to be happy and want to be happy? Yeah, of course it is. I don't want us to get too spiritual and act like we're not supposed to be happy. The thing is, how we achieve happiness is what I'm talking about, the pursuit of happiness in the next few weeks. What is it we are supposed to do to really have happiness? Not this kind where we have to achieve immortality to be happy. We're going to achieve immortality and happiness, but not the way he says. So let's look at a few verses. Make me walk along the path of your commands, talking to God, for that is where my happiness is found. When I go God's way, let's look at another verse in Psalm. Joyful, happy are those who live like this. Joyful, happy are those whose God is the Lord. Yes, happiness is all right. It's a good thing. God wants us to be happy. Let's look at these verses by Jesus. Which of you, if your son asks for bread, will give him a stone? Daddy, I'm hungry. Can I have a piece of bread? No, have this rock. No, you wouldn't do that. If he asks for a fish, will you give him a snake? If you then, though you are evil, yeah, that's what Jesus said, because we all have sinned, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father in heaven give good gifts to those who ask him? Do we believe God is less than a good Father on earth? No, he's more. So yes, God is all right with us being happy. And there's one verse here and one more. 1 John, dear friend, I hope all is well with you, and that you're as healthy in body as you're strong in spirit. There's nothing wrong with Christians wanting to be happy, in being happy. And I like this quote from this preacher. God is in the business of making our lives full of joy, full of gladness, full of happiness. So what I want to talk about today is the first time we first recorded sermon we have of Jesus. It's in Matthew 5. And what subject do you think he starts with? Happiness. The Sermon on the Mount starts with happiness. The name Beatitudes, which is what the first part of this is called. This is what I'm going to talk about today, what's called the Beatitudes. Do you know where that comes from? I used to think this is the attitude you're supposed to be like, so it's the Beatitudes. But I found out it's not. It's from a Latin word which means happiness. So when you hear the Beatitudes, where do you get it? Happiness. The word for blessed in there, and we're going to read it in the King James today because we learned that a lot, is Makarios. What does Makarios mean? Happiness. So Jesus starts right off in his first sentence talking about the true way to find happiness. So I think that's a good thing for us to do. So I'm going to call this prescription for happiness. That's what we're talking about today. Not from Dr. Atwood, from Dr. Jesus. This is his prescription for happiness. All right, number one, realize you need God. You need God. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Poor in spirit. He said blessed, happy. God blesses and happy. Now let me just say this about these 8 things I'm talking about. On the surface, they don't look like they're happy, but he's saying God blesses you, produce happiness. Poor in spirit is like the guy, he says he's a broken person. He's done wrong and he knows it and he's humble. Oh, I'm sorry. And he doesn't look happy. But what does Jesus say? He's happy. Why? Because that's the kingdom of heaven for those kind of people. It takes broken people to receive God's mercy. So I say we need to have our declaration of dependence. Not just a declaration of independence, a declaration of dependence. God, we need you. That's the poor in spirit. You remember, can anybody tell me what this parable is? This picture here, anybody got a guess? I know it's 2 people, it's a little hard to tell. Pharisee and the publican. The publican was the tax collector. And it's wonderful when you're up here preaching and you see people going for gnats like this while you preach. It just makes it. So I don't blame you. I'd do the same. Hit that thing. The publicans were terribly hated as traitors because they were collaborators with the enemy Rome. The Pharisees were lifted up as the religious, almost perfect people. And Jesus turns that on his head because the Pharisee comes to church and he says, oh, thank you, God, and I'm so good. I do all these good deeds. I tithe every week, and thank you. I'm not like this dirty tax collector. And the tax collector wouldn't even lift up his head. Jesus said, "Oh God, be merciful to me, a sinner." And Jesus said, he's the one who went away from there right with God, not the Pharisee. Because you must be broken. You must be poor in spirit. You must be humble and say, "God, I need you to be able to be a part of the kingdom of God." Strutting in saying, "God, aren't you glad you got me?" No way are you getting in until you humble yourself. For the humble shall be exalted, and the exalted shall be made low, Jesus said. So the first part of happiness is, yes, a broken and contrite heart that is poor in spirit says, God, I need you. And he says, you can be happy because God will be there for you. Number 2, mourn with hope. And again, we don't think of mourn with happiness. Blessed are those who mourn. Happy are those who mourn. What? That doesn't make sense. For they shall be comforted. I remember the first time I saw mourning. I was 10 years old at my grandfather's funeral. Nobody looked happy. They were crying. So we mourn because we are human. By the way, you don't quit being human because you're a Christian. You're still human. You just have that extra plus of God in your life. Now, I am still in mourning for my wife who died last month. And that part of mourning isn't happy. It's sad. Waves of sadness come over me every day. I think about her, and I am sorry she's not here, so I almost can't stand it. And you guys know what I'm talking about because some of you have mourned. And I believe you are mourning too because you love Sandy too. And yet Jesus said, happy are those who mourn. Why? Because we can have life again. We will be comforted. We mourn differently. We mourn with hope, is what Jesus was saying. This is the thing that's not good. It's mourning, but I'm telling you, happy are you people because you're going to mourn with hope if you're my follower. There's something different about your mourning. I talked to somebody yesterday and I said, I don't know how people without God and family and friends can make it. And without this hope of eternal life. I don't know how they make it because I barely make it myself. But we mourn with hope. We know that everybody has to face mourning, but there's comfort in knowing there's something after that. I got this picture of a few years ago at the beach because Sandy loved the beach. We were actually at a church conference in Orlando, Florida. It ended, she said, let's drive over to the beach. And we drove over near Cape Canaveral and walked on the beach about an hour and then left for home. But she just wanted to be at the beach. And so there's 2 reasons I'm posting this picture. One is, this is why I keep telling myself, Sandy's at the beach. She loves the beach. She's at a place that is good. I am sad, but she's somewhere that's good. She's not hurting anymore. She's in a good place. And I put this because even though she closed her eyes because the sun is shining, I said to myself, she's winking at us and saying, I'm good. I'm in a good place. You don't worry about me. And so I say we can mourn. We're human. We mourn. But we mourn with hope. And that's how we can be happy in spite of this. Number 3, be gentle in strength. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. The meek. You ever talk to a child and say, what do you want to be when you want to grow up? Well, I just want to be meek. Nobody says that. I want to grow up and be meek. That's that. We think that's a bad thing. And Jesus said, you're good. You're the meek. Blessed. Happy are you, the meek. You're the ones who are going to inherit the earth. So, see, meekness is not weakness. And it's not being passive. Just let everybody say anything about you, do anything to you. I'm not talking about that. Meekness is strength in control. Under control. There's 2 people in the Bible that talks about me and me. The first is Moses. Was Moses weak? No way. He had to wrestle the children of Israel in one hand and the Pharaoh in Egypt in the other hand, wrestle them together, get the children of Israel out of that country. He had fighting the whole way for 40 years. And he stood strong as a leader. Was he weak? No. But he could have done a lot more with his power that he didn't know. He was gentle in his strength and meekness under control, even I'm sure when he wanted to go and slap a few people. Or I know I would have wanted to. But he didn't. And you know who the other one said is meek? Jesus. It said Jesus was meek. Was he weak? Absolutely not. He could have said to all the Roman soldiers, waved his hand and knocked them all over dead. But he was strength under control. He said it says later on in another book in the Bible that he didn't act like this is something he wanted to grasp, to be lifted up and in power, because he knew he was coming to die on the cross. And so he was humble and humbled himself even to death. So meekness is not weakness. Meekness is when you have strength and authority, you don't abuse it. It's a boss who does not bully his employees. It's a king who does not bully his subjects, but has strength under control. It's a strong person who doesn't try to hurt a little person or try to bully them. It's meekness. And so meekness seems like that we're the losers. But what Jesus said, no, you be happy. When you know you still do what you're supposed to do, even when you could abuse your strength, you're the ultimate winner. You're the ones who inherit the earth. Who wants to keep that under control? Number 4, desire to do the right thing. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. That's almost got a bad connotation to it, righteousness. If you go out and tell someone, well, I'm righteous, they, we always think of self-righteous. But righteousness is not a bad thing. Righteousness is just you're living right. You're doing right things. And he said, blessed are those if you hunger and thirst, I want to do the right thing. For they shall be satisfied. Now, I love this picture because this to me symbolizes the end of all my Westerns. I watched 2 more Western movies yesterday. One reason I watch Westerns, the bad guys always get it in the end. They at first look like they're going to get away with it, don't they? Oh, no, he's the bad guy. But he gets found out, he gets caught, he's to get on to jail or punished, and the good guy comes out the winner, and he gets the girl and rides off into the sunset. And I am satisfied. I get that good. Sometimes when I turn on one, the end of another one's ending, I watch the last couple of minutes of that just to see a happy ending. Because I love happy endings. And I think this is what Jesus is saying. In the end, you hunger and thirst to do what's right. In the end, you're going to be satisfied. You're going to have the feeling like, yes, it looked like the bad guys were getting away with it, which it does in this world sometimes. But in the long term, you're going to be satisfied for doing what is right. So you do what's right, and that leads to no guilt. Not sitting around being guilty, oh, I shouldn't have done that, or worried about getting caught, or regrets. You don't want to end your life with a bunch of regrets of, I should have stood up and done what was right, or I should have been kinder to people. Why was I so mean? You don't want to have regrets. Clear conscience. So, it's long-term, good results when we do what is right. And that should be our desire. God, you show me what is right. That's what I want to do. Not what people over here think is popular for today, that 10 years ago it wasn't popular with anybody, and now it's the thing that you've got to be with, you're going to get canceled. No. You show me what is right, God, and I want to go that way. We should hunger for that. Number 5, give others what they don't deserve. What? Is this supposed to be easy? Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. Now, mercy means they didn't actually deserve what you're giving them. Maybe you give them a break. Maybe you overlook it. Maybe you treat them like they didn't. Maybe they weren't nice to you, but you're nice to them. You give them mercy. They didn't deserve it, but that's what merciful is. You give them what they don't deserve. And when you do that, you get mercy. Here's why you're happy. You get mercy from God and from others. Now let's think about an example. Marriage. If there's anywhere we need mercy, it's in 2 married people. Because you're rubbing each other all the time. And you can do some things, you be a little grumpy, mistreat a little bit, don't say things you shouldn't have said. and you're tempted to get them back. Oh, yeah? Well, let me show you two can play at that game. And I know nobody out here has ever thought that, but in other places they have. And what does Jesus say? Blessed are the merciful. If you are mercy, even though they were grumpy when you handed something, you'll say thank you and you're polite. You don't try to get them back when they, said that you are merciful to them, then you know what happens? I think God will speak to them and they say, well, I need merciful too. And you get mercy back. When you're merciful to people, I think in the long run you get mercy back to you. What we don't need in marriages is two perfectionists. What a miserable marriage. If you've got two perfectionists, always demanding perfection and never getting it, and never giving any mercy. Somebody's got to start overlooking some things, giving a little forgiveness, a little mercy. If you want to have a happy marriage, lower those expectations and just be happy with that imperfect human God gave you. Now, I'm not saying you put up with everything. There's things you got to talk about, Instead of holding a grudge. Those things get heavy after a while. You're holding that grudge, they don't even know about it. Or bitterness. You're churning your stomach, they don't even know about it. Or thinking about payback. How can I get her back for the way she talked about me? I want to find out a doozy of a time. Instead of doing that, give people what they don't deserve, and in the end, you get mercy, and you'll be glad you did. Number 6, guard your heart. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Now, let's say you come to my house, you want to, can I have a drink of water? Sure. And I brought out 2 cups of water, and I said, which one do you want? Which one do you think you'd want? 2 glasses of water. Well, we know you want the pure water, the clean water. Clean water has been a problem in the history of the world. Killed millions of people, dirty water. Millions. It's still a problem. Some places can't get pure water. But as much as we need pure water, we need pure hearts. Not hypocrisy, where we act one way, but the hearts are not pure. It's really a whole different kind of heart. Conniving, sneaking, do what I can get away with heart. Not a pretense, not just talking about it, but real pure hearts. The pure hearts are the ones who shall see God. I'm not talking about God in the flesh, but someday when you have pureness, you're able to see with clarity and understand God more and see Him when your hearts are pure. And that's the happy way. And someday we will see Him. Number 7, we work for peace. Blessed are happy are the peacemakers, for they should be called sons of God, children of God, the peacemakers. You ever been some people at work or even in your family who like to sort of cause division? They go to this one over here and they say these things. Yeah, she said the other day about you that you didn't like the way you dressed, that you had a little bit of a belly and then the shoes really pretty. And then they go over to this one and she said, well, she didn't care what you thought about her. What are they doing? He that sows discord is one of the things God hates. But I see people like they want to cause division when instead Jesus said, happy are the peacemakers. When you have 2 people that are friends of yours and they're fussing with each other and you're talking to this one and they give you a little bit of a rant, because we all give a little bit of rant sometimes when we get aggravated. Well, they were just acting like an angel. But I will say this. I do believe sincerely she wants to do the right thing. Now, do you take the rant to your friend when she really was mad? Or do you take that last one and say, well, you know what she said about you? She said, what? She said, well, she thought you really did want to do the right thing. Oh, she did? Well, and then she says something good and you take that over here. What are you? You're a peacemaker instead of a divider. Be a peacemaker. We need more peacemakers. Blessed are they. They're the ones that people say, now there's a child of God. They're a peacemaker. That's what Jesus said. And number 8, stand for Jesus and right no matter what. This is a hard one. Blessed are they who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for doing right. You're persecuted for doing right, and I'm supposed to be happy? Why am I? Where is the happiness here? Where's the blessing? For theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Your reward is great in heaven. Now I want you to see in all 8 of these things, Jesus is not promising no trouble in this world because you're a follower of His. You're going to mourn, you're going to be misunderstood, and you may even be persecuted. But Jesus says you can still be happy. You can still be blessed of God, even in all these things. Now, right now, there's persecution. There's soft persecution in America in the sense that sometimes you're excluded, talked about, hate speech on Twitter, where the brave people use a different name and it can say all manner of hate and cuss words about other people. So brave. You know, people have been lost their jobs and been not able to get a job because of their stand for Jesus and what's right. That's happening in America. In Nigeria, Muslim terrorists are killing hundreds of Christians, killing them. And so there is such a thing as persecution. So this is hard. Blessed are they which are persecuted for righteousness' sake. But Jesus is saying we ought to be happy to be on the right side and know it, that we're doing what God wants us to do, and someday He's going to take us to heaven and be rewarded. And not be cowardly. And I wonder if some of our younger people here, and maybe the older people too, if we're not going to face some of this in our lifetime, because things are changing in America so fast, that we're going to be challenged for our stand as a Christian and even face suffering for it. And the question will be, what will we do? Will we stand for Jesus and for righteousness, for what is right, or will we cave? God help us, give us the strength to stand for what is right. Because then you will get a great reward in heaven, and in the long run, you'll be glad. The end, this is the first part of the Sermon on the Mount, chapter 5, 6, and 7, a long sermon in Matthew. At the end of all the Sermon on the Mount, which is a lot more than what I talked about, Jesus told about the wise man and the foolish man, where they built their houses. The wise man built his house on a rock foundation. That's the one, he says, who listen to me and do it. The foolish man built his house on a foundation of sand. He heard me, but he still did what he wanted to do. And when the storms of life come, the wise man's house stands firm. The foolish man's house is wiped away by the storms. Sometimes we just look at what the way things are now, it looks like we're on the losing side, and Jesus says, you be happy, you're on the winning side. You just got to look long term and realize they're on a sorry, weak foundation. It will not stand. It will crush. It will crumble. And so, what makes us happy? Doing right over the long haul makes us happy. That's the prescription for happiness. When you do what you're supposed to do, trusting God, doing right over the long haul, it brings happiness. And so, decision, and God will bless those right things that we do. We do right, then it's happiness because God blesses it. We have to trust God's blessings. And so, decisions that lead to short-term pleasure can lead to long-term pain. Maybe the salesman's out traveling a lot, and he meets up with another woman besides his wife somewhere. Short-term pleasure. But then later on, as it usually happens, you get found out and you get long-term pain. It seems like short-term pleasure for some of these people. Think, I'll try a little hit of some drug, and then somebody brings some stronger drugs, and they get hooked or they get killed, and it's long-term pain for short-term pleasure. Over and over we could say that about so many things. Doing the wrong thing with money, doing the wrong thing with how we treat each other. We do the wrong thing, and it seems good at first. I told them off. Boy, that felt good to tell them off. And then long term, that person doesn't want anything to do with you. Short term, we got to look long term for happiness, Following Jesus means sometimes enduring short-term pain that can lead to long-term happiness. That's what we need to understand. Do right now, long-term, that's going to be the best thing because we know God knows what He's talking about.